All right, so we're going to get started today. Thank you everybody for joining us for our Innovate Pasadena Ask Me Anything. We are joined today by Maggie Shih, who is the co-founder and program director of Mentor Me Zambia. So Maggie, thank you so much for joining Innovate Pasadena today, and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So let's, should we do I'm going to do the share screen, right? Is that what I'm doing? Okay. Let me make sure I got this right. Okay. All right, just like everybody would be asked, can you see my screen? That it looks like a giraffe. Okay, cool. All right, thanks everyone for having me. And I know that this might be a little different topic than what most of you guys are used to, and happy to answer any questions. I did actually come from different startups in LA, totally LA based, and took a sabbatical to go to Africa, specifically in Zambia. So let's talk about startup lessons. I want to give a bit of an introduction, because I realize after doing quite a few of these, most people have various different understandings of Africa. So let me just do a little bit of this. It's for fun. There's no right or wrong answers. So just, humor me here. Okay, so first question is, how many United States can fit in Africa? Now I'm going to do this poll anywhere. If you guys can participate, that would be absolutely excellent. I am going to activate this. Sorry about that. Go ahead, I'll give you guys a little bit of, so how many United States do you think can fit in Africa as a continent? Don't cheat. I know you guys can probably Google it. Okay, I got a 5. Any other takers? Okay, 3. Let's get a few more. 2. Okay. All right, one more. Who got another one? All right, I'll pause there, no worries, because actually 3 is a pretty good answer. All right, so in fact, if you actually look at Africa, we tend to actually look at Africa sometimes as a country, but it's not. It has many countries. But if you actually compare it to all the other countries, it's quite big. It can fit in multiple countries. All right, another question I have is, oh, sorry, my bad. When you think of Africa, what comes to mind? Now I ask you this one. Again, there is no wrong answers at all. What do you think of Africa when it comes to mind? Safari, colorful, okay. Big 5, yes. Fun. Poverty, yeah. I'm glad someone's being honest here. There's definitely that too. Desert, depending on where, like Namibia, for example. Any other ones people can think of? Strong, community, yes. Community is very, very powerful. Awesome. All right, so here's the thing about Africa. Some of you guys, like, you're right. Back in 2000, especially after many coups and wars, we look at Africa as a hopeless continent. But as of now, it's becoming a very, very strong and empowering continent in terms of growth. And if you look at my personal experience, I'm not going to lie, I had my firsthand challenge when I actually went for a sabbatical, taking a break from my startups that I founded in 2016. I decided to go to Zambia, Africa, And of course, as of now, as all of you guys are familiar with, we are still dealing with pandemic, but I've been dealing with some kind of pandemic and some kind of electrical outages since 2018. So in terms of like, if people are complaining about sanitizers, I've been using that since 2018 nonstop. It's been with my purse at all times. And in 2020, as you guys all know, I had to actually come back quite early. It was not my plan to stop my sabbatical this soon. As you guys know, March in 2020, there's a lot of flights are canceling, everything's canceling. Everyone is going to very few central places to get connections. And so when I came back, I also had to do my own self-quarantine in an RV that was supported by my sister and my brother-in-law. And so so in terms of challenges, I completely have been through that, and I'm sure you guys have personally felt it too. Sorry, I keep doing that. Wrong one. Okay, but here's the cool thing about Africa. If you look at the landscape, there's actually about $2 billion, 74% year-over-year growth in 2019. It's actually growing really, really fast. It's definitely one of the early stage environment in terms of investment. And this is just tech. And there's about 618 tech hubs. There's actually more now. One of my startups that I'm working with, we are partnering with one of the tech hubs in Zambia. And African Business Angels networks, there's quite a lot of them. In fact, one of the initiatives I had to do is we have to start one in Zambia as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about why we have to do all of this. But there's quite a lot. So I want to give you a little fun stuff about Zambia. So I know not a lot of people know where it is. I didn't either before. So Zambia is right below Kenya and above South Africa. And I'll give you a few fun facts just for fun. There's actually 72 languages in Zambia. Now, their national language is English, but that only works if you are in education, like educated, and you have to pass 4th grade to be able to get English as your language. Another fun fact that I really liked, and they like to talk about this, is that Nelson Mandela was originally from South Africa. During the struggle against apartheid, he had to, in some way, flee to Zambia because it was considered a neutral state at that time, just like Switzerland for Africa. Another fun fact, the first country to certify organic and fair trade honey in the world is actually in Zambia. Most of us probably heard of places like New Zealand or some other, but no, it's actually Zambia. That was the first one with organic honey. Last one, they love to brag about this one because if you like Black Panther, a lot of waterfall scenes are technically inspired by the Victoria Falls, which is located between Zambia and Zimbabwe. And of course, the one that they filmed, they like to say that's on the Zambia side. So if you like water rafting, that's actually one of the most, I would say the top 3 most exciting water rafting in the world. So definitely need to go to Africa. Check out your big 5, do the water rafting if you want to. But here's some non-so-fun facts. If you look at this map, this is the world poverty map. You can see where it's highlighted. The red basically means it's bad. And it's mostly concentrated in Africa. And in Zambia, there's actually 59%, over 59% is living under $2 a day. So this is what we call extreme poverty. But what's really cool about it, like I mentioned about the investments, $2.2 billion is quite a lot in terms of what has been growing, especially 77% year-over-year growth. But if you look at just over $500,000 investments raised between 2019 and 2020, there's quite a lot. And I just want to mention that some of these are empty here. This is actually not a bad thing because for a lot of VCs, they like to go in less crowded places to go investments. So part of the reason why I'm very happy looking at Zambia is because that's where I'm at. So it has a lot of potentials there. Okay, so really quick background, not to bore you guys. I did come from a lot of tech startups. In fact, I'm LA based, so been through a lot of that. So why in the world am I ended up in Zambia? Well, let's just say that, being a startup entrepreneur, it's always fun to have different challenges. And one of the things that I've learned in Zambia is all the different challenges that we experience in startups in the United States, but probably exponentially harder, potentially much more challenging, but much more exciting. And so 2018 and on, I've been there, actually co-founded 3 different initiatives or startups, if you will. And I'm not doing 3 because I love so many startups. It's actually partially because of the ecosystem that required us to create multiple different startups to link our overall pipelines that's required for the entrepreneurship over there to be successful. So we actually work with GSG, which stands for Global, I always forget, Global Service, what is it called? Global Steering Group for Impact Investment. It's actually Boris Johnson's legacy in the UK. And now there's about 33 countries involved, including Zambia, of course, US as well. And then we also partner with ABAN, which is the Pan-African Business Angels Network. Okay, just really quick, three key takeaways, and I'm going to tell you one story because there's way too many stories to tell. So hopefully, based off the questions, I might be able to answer some other stories that I might have. But 3 of the things that I learned is that a lot of times we look at risk as negatives, but if you think about like Uber, Airbnb, there are so many companies that disrupted or even Netflix disrupted the industry. It's the same in Africa. We can look at that as opportunities, glasses half full versus half empty. The other thing I also learned is that I think we have a tendency to really rely too much on data, especially in the Western, like on the Western world, and we forget to ask the why. A lot of times the data are very misleading. You might look at, okay, well, poverty, extreme poverty, $2 and less. Well, let's say if you're in a rural area, what can you really spend anyway? So a lot of times that may not actually matter that much. It's the opportunities that matters. But there's also different stories, like if you look at Africa, we have to realize that mobile is what disrupted that entire continent. And there's actually over 50% of the user all on mobile devices. And lastly, partnership with process. What I mean by that is not customers, it's actually partners and employees that you work with. When you're in a country that, when the disparity between poor and wealthy is so wide, the type of people that you can work with are very, very, very small in a sense. Everybody knows everyone, but they also have very, very wide connections. And so if you have the right people and you can actually build an ecosystem together, you can actually build an entire business or uplift the entire economy over there. And so those are the kind of 3 things. And of course, it's very different in the US. It's not that they're not the same. It's just that I think the importance is much, much higher and the risk is definitely higher as well. Okay, I'll tell you one story and I'll stop because I'm sure you guys are bored of me talking all the time because I love to hear questions. The one story I have is essential oils, because when I actually went there, I knew nothing about nonprofit organizations, NGO, if you call it, or even farming. You know, I don't know, I'm not a farmer. But in order for us to learn about certain countries, we kind of have to stay with what the most population consists of. And my co-founder, who's a local Zambian, was very well connected over there as well. We decided to do a research study that's actually in the field and connecting all the supply chains from market demand all the way to the actual distillation. And so we decided to do essential oils because the market is there. Here's what's interesting about this story I want to explain, is that a lot of times we talk about product market fit or the demand supply has to be accurate and all these things that we talk about, or even the money, like we had to have a certain amount of money. And the thing is, I basically spent very little money, started this essential oils, with the exception of me moving there for about 2 years. And here's what's interesting about it is a lot of times we think of market fit requires the product and the market. But this particular scenario that we ran into in Zambia, the market is there. The product is actually there. We actually have, I connected a US supplier who works with 10,000 Villages and some of the soap companies that we know of, and as well as Whole Foods. They are ready to help us. They want to work with us because they don't have enough oils to supply their product. So it's there. They even sign contract with us and say they'll pay as long as we can produce. They even want to teach us for free. And remember, I knew nothing about farming. And so what happened is that if they're out there, why was it still not happening in Zambia? In fact, in Zambia, you have over 60% of natural woodlands that are pretty much paradise for bees, which means that a lot of these essential oils, if they have flowers or anything like that, it's completely perfect. And their climate is perfect. There's actually done studies that they have more crops or more essential oil crops can be produced there. So why is it so hard to, why is there no market? Why do they have over, I think 80 to 90% of their import is coming from South Africa. They did not even grow the essential oil themselves. And so what we learned is that a lot of nonprofit organizations very present there have sometimes are trying to support the rural farmers, which is all the right people that we need to support. But one thing, and because they're in some ways they are suppliers, they could, and then hopefully we can provide customers and consumers abroad or even locally. But the thing is that they can't expand them usually very easily. Think about this. When we actually reach out, we start up with the same concept because our social impact company, the one that signed a contract with us in the US, wanted us to work with rural areas. When we talk to them, think about their extreme poverty of $2 or less. They can't, when they farm, they have to make sure they can eat them. Essential oil is not edible. And it takes a whole year at least, or maybe even 6 months to get anywhere. And also sometimes that they might get these contracts and then these contracts disappear later because maybe the companies went belly up or some agenda changed. And so a lot of farmers with that, and plus I'm a foreigner. And so they have a lot of different experiences, exposures, but good and bad, with different foreigners or even government policies. And so asking them to grow something completely different when they have to figure out what they're going to eat today is really, really challenging. And so what we learned is that that partnership I was talking about, what we found out is actually in Zambia, they're all the middle class people. They all have to worry about their retirement plan. They don't have the kind of US investment like stock markets that we have. In fact, my co-founder founded their stock market. There's about 6 companies listed there only. And so the opportunity is not really there. And trying to do foreign investment like the US stocks, you have to have some kind of baseline base money to be able to do that because it's not your country's stocks. And so they all buy land because what else do you do with your money if you want to do investment? Now, these people all work full time, but they don't know what to do with their land. And so what we have discovered after talking to all of our friends in Zambia, they all have land and they don't know what to do. And we just asked, would you want to grow essential oils? And pretty much we have more than we could actually handle to accommodate this. And in fact, they have the money for the investment, whereas the farmers that a lot of nonprofit organizations have to deal with, they have to supply them with money and distillations and technologies and everything. And so pretty much one of the things that I have discovered is that a lot of times people that we think are our partners are not what the market is telling us. Sometimes we have to really look into that. And then another thing about, I want to say essential oils is the monetary, the digital part. How do we actually transfer money? And so that was another challenging for a lot of different companies to succeed in scaling because they can't reach rural areas that easily. It's very difficult. And because it's all offline, you have no idea where that money goes sometimes. And so what we actually learned that in fact, smart devices tends to be a bad, I would say, assumptions because they have 50% mobile users, but that doesn't mean they all have smart devices. And so there's actually a technology called USSD, unstructured supplementary data, It's basically like cheap, fast code that you see, like what the interactive that we just did, very similar to that, where it's pretty much free for anybody who has the cheapest phone possible. And for the first time, we can actually use that to be able to do digital monetary transaction to any farmers. And there's these, what I call money mobile booth all over the place in Africa, that you can use that to basically send money to somebody you want. If you're a manager of a land, you send money to a farmer in rural areas. You never have to go there to pay them. And then the farmers can go to any of these booths within their area to pick up their money. Because as you know, rural areas, infrastructure is not there. Trying to establish a bank is very, very expensive. And so there's a lot of micro entrepreneurs that all have their money booths. That's like a very interesting market that actually completely transformed Africa till this day. So I'll stop here because, like I said, I'll keep talking, but I'll let you guys ask any questions you have, because there's just way too many stories. I don't even know where to stop or where to begin.
And Maggie, we had a few of our audience members ask us questions ahead of time. So I'm sharing with the audience now one of our first questions that somebody submitted before the event.
Okay, so were there any unintended consequences working in an environment full of NGOs, nonprofit organizations? Oh, okay. So I did mention that a little bit. There's definitely unintended. I'm sure some of you guys have heard of Tom's Shoes. When they started, they want every pair of shoes you buy, they'll donate a pair of shoes to the sort of the needed kids. But the challenge they also ran into was that they didn't realize they actually destroyed the local market, because now all of a sudden the local markets don't need to buy shoes for their kids. And so there's that kind of unintended consequences, which Tom's realizes. So they've been correcting that since. But those are some of the consequences. So one of the experiences that we also ran into with NGOs is what I talked to you about, where they would go to the farmers and say, hey, we have this money, we'll buy product from you, just grow these products. But what they don't realize is that what if the grant runs out? Then these farmers grow this, it takes like a couple years to grow. And even though the first couple of years they get paid by these NGOs, there's no market there. Or the market is there, but they didn't have the connected market. And so all of a sudden they'll just destroy their long-term financial support. So there's a lot of unintended consequences like that happening in Africa, which is why when you do a startup there, you have to really think about what are some of the NGOs or government policy, because every government, every country also have their different agenda going into Africa as well. And we have to actually look at how that actually impact our startup ideas and our initiatives.
Okay, so we actually have a couple of audience questions here right now, and Aaron is asking more stories. I'd love to hear more details about setting up the Angel Network and how that works differently than in the US.
Okay, how is that different? Okay, so I love that question, because that question is by far one of the hardest questions. It took us about almost 3 years now, because 2020 was year 3, where I had to come back and do that remotely. And it was very challenging doing it remotely. Imagine no electricity that I experienced every day over there, and that was still happening in 2020. So because of lack of water, lack of rain, that's why they didn't have enough power. So let me go back to that answer. So Angels Network, what we have discovered is we have to start locally. We have to get the local people, influencers, to be interested, because usually it's driven locally before we can go internationally. So when we actually went through that, we initially thought international, but then as we start talking to all the friends, like I said, that level of the disparity between wealth and poor are very wide. But then if you know the right people, all those people will connect you to their cousins and brothers and sisters and best friends and somebody in another country who's a diaspora. And once we get that, we found out that actually a lot of them all want to invest, but they don't know where to put that money. They have a hard time. And then one of the things they also realize is the ecosystem, the supply chain is lacking. And there are people investing there, but it's not a end-to-end connections. So what we have decided to do is we decided to work with people who know how to do this in Africa, which is ABAN. And they've been basically helping and training us along with other social impact initiatives that was either by the UK government or by the local government for funding. And so when we realized that, a couple of challenges. One, legal issues. Second, legal, because the structure for starting companies there is not very solid. People don't really understand or care about equity. And so there's a lot of that lacking there. And then the third thing is, who are those people that would be willing to put money in? Now, the good news is that there are a lot of countries in Africa have already started doing this for quite some time. So we're actually not starting this from scratch. Second, a lot of local Zambians or diaspora, they are ready to invest to actually provide that sort of mentorship. And that's one thing that we realize is that we actually need to have mentorship there. Unlike here, the biggest difference I would say is in Zambia or Africa in general, because of the past history, a lot of them don't have any exposure to running businesses. They don't really know how to do that. Whereas here, if you think about it, we can ask probably, I'm sure your uncle or mom or grandma probably have done some kind of restaurants or some kind of businesses, small businesses. In fact, majority of our businesses here are all small. They all know how to run something. Over there, not so much. And so what we also realized, the gap that we had to fill, which international people can do very, very well, is providing a lot of skills, mentorship to help them learn how to scale and execute. So to summarize, there's legal challenges, which we actually can learn from other African angels networks because they have done a lot. There's enough for us to be able to replicate. And also there's a diaspora and also local Zambians that can help us. As long as we do the mentorship well, it's really, really helpful. The last thing I want to call out, which is really cool about Africa, is here to start a company, you probably need a minimum of $50,000 to even start something, and then probably $500,000 to last, maybe for a year or two, if you're lucky. But over there, they don't need a lot. Actually, most of the minimum we ask is probably $2,000 to $5,000 from each investor to start with. So hopefully that answers some questions.
Wow, $2,000. So this is a continuation, I think, of the previous question. Someone is asking, is the process for investing in startups different? What do investors look at to decide if the business will be successful?
This is specifically in Zambia. What do they look at to be successful? Okay. I think a lot of them are similar to the US, right? First of all, they look at the ideas, whether or not they can see a market opportunity there. Second, they look at the people who are running it, the founders. So those two, I don't think are different. What is different in Africa is the connections, the supply chain. So I'll give you an example about Uber. When Uber actually went into Zambia, they thought, they've tried this 4 times now. And right now, from what I heard, they're still secretly trying to figure out the market. But the first time they went in, they thought, we can go in, they have a bunch of cabs there waiting for people. We can basically streamline this, replicate this, copy. But then they weren't able to do it. Just because here's one big reason. 70%, I'll give you an example of garment industry. 70% of the donated garments that we have all went to Africa. That's their second market, Salaua. Like the way how they purchase, it's like our outlet mall for them. So if their majority of market is secondhand, you can just imagine the cars that they get that are available to drive. So number one, rules that already broke is back then Uber's requirement for fit, what's a fit car. that completely failed in Zambia because even though these cabs are there, they are not qualified to work for Uber. What was interesting was that Lendo was a local company, understood all of this. They also understood the digital money, mobile money challenges that I kind of mentioned to you, because not everybody has a bank account, not everybody can easily transfer money. And so they also understood that. And so they pretty much are the only successful local, quote unquote, Uber on demand company in Zambia. So to answer your questions, a lot of times it's not just the market opportunities. You actually have to also look at the supply chains and all the different connections that require for your business to succeed. Whereas in the US, you got Gusto for HR, you have a different accounting applications you can use are completely, QuickBooks, like works for the US taxes. They don't have that for Zambia. And so all these things, they have to find people to work for them. And that's one of the reasons why we started 3 different initiatives, because one of them is related to that, is we're trying to aggregate all the skills like this to be able to supply to all the entrepreneurs that we'll be investing in. So we have to do more work.
Okay, so another question here from our audience. Lauren is asking, it wasn't clear if the oils were for export or domestic consumption. If export, how do organizations set up export logistics to other parts of the country and world?
That's a great question. So remember I talked about you have to have end-to-end connections, right? That requires a lot of partnerships. We have to find them because they're not easily accessible. There's no Amazon for me to just go do the third-party thing. It doesn't work that way. So to answer your question, there's different ways. They're all there because the businesses are exporting, the businesses are importing. So they're all there. They're just scattered. And so a lot of times you have to find them. And that is the challenge that a lot of what I called emerging markets are like, because these are not centralized, they're not exposed, they all are scattered and you have to find them. So the way how we went about, because that's the research that we did was very successful. We actually passed it back to the local Zambians to run it on their own, including the farmers and managers. So we pretty much had a complete handoff. But what we did, I had to go find a US market who's willing to buy, and I find out what they can provide. So they also have to do knowledge transfer, and also they have to tell us all the connections they have so far. Then luckily they have a distillery that they've been training in Zambia. And also one of the founders actually have a commercial farm in Zambia doing essential oils. They're just separate projects. So they already know how to export because they have the supply and demand commercial business connections. So as long as you can find them, because they're there, you just have to connect the dot yourself. And that's basically what we did, was connecting all the pieces together, knowing that the assumption number one is they don't exist until I go find them. So hopefully that helps. It's there.
Okay, we have another audience question. If we want to invest in Africa, are there special precautions we need to take? Legal, accounting, money transfer?
Absolutely, everything. But I will say this. Keep in mind, we have to separate looking at Africa as some kind of unique entity. It's actually not. Africa is just like any other countries or continents. If you look at China 40 years ago, they were exactly in the same position. And so the thing is that the risks are all there. It's just that they're so early. That's why a lot of things are not centralized. A lot of things are not, they're all scattered. So in terms of risk, yes, legal is one. It's because depending on different countries, different governments have different policies that they do have. Some are more friendly for entrepreneurs, others are not as much. In fact, Zambia is not the easiest place to do business, but it's actually not the hardest either. And then second, financially, yes. So remember I talked about the essential oil money transaction. So we have to actually find the right partners whom I don't have to worry about the money transaction toward the very, very end, because the partners we work with are all middle-class people that have farms, that they know exactly who to hire. I don't even have to worry about hiring these farmers. They'll take care of it. They'll figure out the money transaction. I don't even have to deal with that. I just have to make sure that we are giving them money, and that could be detractable. So in terms of, you know, money laundering or any potential bad activities happening under the table, we don't have to worry about that. They'll take care of it. And because those are their employees and that's their land, they end up having to make sure, because it's also their long-term investment. So there's definitely there. So I would say, maybe if you want to ask like very easy answer to this, is you do have to find the right partners and founders that you trust. I am fortunate enough to have a very good friend who is Zambian. Like I said, he's a co-founder of mine. Has a lot of great experiences and connections, and someone who's trustworthy. And then having something like a Zambian Business Angels Network help formalize a lot of that, so that your risk goes down, because now you have multiple people investing in the same pool, figuring that out. So from a legal standpoint, you can then basically look at it from everybody cares, not just you, and you can do that together. In terms of money transactions, same thing. There's actually different organizations are willing to handle things like that. And so it's just finding the right partnership. This is why I think in Zambia or in Africa, why partnership is not that US is not important, but in Africa, it's even more important, especially for emerging markets. I hope that answered that question. And then there's a question about export import. I forgot to answer that one. The essential oil is actually currently for export only, but we can easily make it an import. The only reason why we do export is it makes more money right now. So, and we have all the contracts already signed with the US buyers. So until we make more where they don't need it anymore, you know, the import part is probably not going to happen anytime soon.
Okay, we have another question. I should mention, I know we're about 8 minutes over here. You've agreed to stick with us and answer a few more questions, so definitely appreciate.
No, totally. I'm so sorry. I realized the presentation went a little long, so apologize for that.
It was interesting. I think that gave a lot of people more questions that they want to ask you. So Jennifer is asking, what do you think American entrepreneurs can learn from Zambian entrepreneurs?
Oh, I love that one too. Gosh, you guys have really good questions. Okay, one of the things you can learn. So the market is growing like crazy in emerging market. We all know, like when you're in an emerging market, everything is raw, which also means that there's a lot, it's what I call wild, wild west. And the wild, wild west means that the people that are involved, they have to be very scrappy and extremely talented in what they're doing. I hate to say this, when I showed up there, just like typical expat, you felt like, oh, I can definitely provide some input. I did a lot, but I found out that a lot of them are even more talented than I am, and they have to, because of competition. And so I guess the biggest difference is for them to start companies over there, they have to have even more drive than we do, because when they give up their full-time job, they really did give up their full-time job. It is very difficult to find a job over there that easily that pays really well and respectable. And so the commitment is very high there. So when they are doing it, they're truly going all in for most of them. The other thing that we can also learn from them, so that tenacity, I would say, it's a totally different level. The other one is the growth mindset. They're constantly, they're actually more entrepreneurial over there, I believe, in some ways. There is actually a study they have done in different countries where US is actually quite balanced, but in Western Europe, there's actually people rather work versus starting a company. because of the benefits and all that. So it's not bad, it's just different behavior and policy changes will change behaviors. But over there, because there's not a lot of support from that perspective, remember, they don't have retirement, the pension may not even show up. So they have to think about what to do when they retire, or how are they going to survive, or how are they going to continue. So so in that case, the one of the things that we can learn from them is the willingness to constantly change and learn, the adaptability. They are very, very driven for rapid changes. They have no problem with that. In fact, sometimes I would argue might be too much. So I have to kind of tell them about a little bit structure might be nice, but that's the kind of balance that they're having challenges over there. I hope I answered that question. That one has a lot of answers.
Yeah, a loaded question. So we did have another question that was asked by someone who signed up here, and they were asking, is product market fit enough for sustainable and scalable startups?
Okay, can you repeat that question again? Sorry, I missed that.
So shared on the screen with the audience, is product market fit enough for sustainable and scalable startups?
Oh, okay. Well, I think the short answer is no. For the US, I would also argue it's not. But I think maybe the difference is in Africa, like I mentioned, there's a lot more things that are not ready. It's not like they have an enterprise for HR, enterprise for accounting, enterprise for operations, enterprise for supply chain. And so there's a lot more over there, because you can have the market and perfect product, perfect demand, but you can't deliver it because you have missing gaps on your entire supply chain. And so that's the one part is probably the biggest differences. The biggest difference over there is to make sure that you have that solved before you can really start anything. Doesn't mean that you can't start scrappy. It just means that you have to keep in mind that there's a difference between supplying to 5 people versus supplying to 5,000 people versus supplying to 50,000 people, because that supply chain changes.
Okay, I believe if there are no more audience questions, if anyone has one last question for Maggie, since she's agreed to hang out with us for a little bit longer today, please type it in the Q&A. But I'm curious, coming back to the US, could you share with everybody, what's like a couple of the big things that you're going to take away from this experience?
Wow. I think before COVID happened, I had to say, I knew that everyone warned me going to another country, they're so different than yours. You're going to come back really different. And one of the things that I've been warned, and I can fully appreciate after that, and now COVID probably appreciate even more, is taking for granted all the things that we have already here. I'm not talking about like personal, like luxuries. I could also talk about business, right? Because like I said, that if I want to start a business here, I could probably do it very easily, even if it's just one person shop. Over there, it's a totally different ballgame. And so just really appreciating some of the maturity that we have here. The other thing is learning about, I think there's some, I would say, unintentional beliefs that once you live in the country that's so different than yours, you really have to unlearn a lot of that. So like I said, not gonna lie, I think most people, including myself, will think Africa, sometimes we just put them all together into one, but every country is so different and their personalities are different and they're known for different things. So they're just as dynamic as we are. So when I was there, I realized, wow, it's a totally different world. So.
Well, Maggie, super interesting stories. I want more, so you're going to have to come back and share some more. And I know we had a few audience members who said more stories. Oh, yeah. But
have so many. I don't even know where to go.
Well, we're willing to listen. It's a great learning experience. It does look like we might have a couple more questions here if you have a few more minutes.
Sure.
So we do have one person saying one more.
No worries.
One more question. Oh, okay. One more question.
Yeah.
Why did you select Zambia?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so first of all, that was not even on the top of my list when I was thinking about taking a sabbatical. So when I decided that I want to take a break from all the tech startups that I went through, I said, let me just take a break. I have time. I have the financial means to do it. Let's just do it and see what happens. And I was like, okay, where to go? Zambia was now on the list. I've been there before as a tourist, but I did not have very positive impression because of poachers. So, but that's a totally different story. Poachers, sometimes we kind of make them look like a really evil group of people, but a lot of times when they're starving to death, they don't really have a choice. So, and they're trying to survive. So anyway, side comment. Actually, it's really by, first of all, I want to go to Africa because I decide if I'm going to do a sabbatical, I want to go to a place that I have the least understanding of. So Africa was the continent that I picked. In terms of countries, then I start looking at opportunities. So two things. One is I was looking at which one has sort of like the hype of interesting places that you could go. So, people talked about Tanzania, Rwanda, Botswana, those are like the up and coming. Uganda was another one up and coming, but they never mentioned about Zambia. So I ended up there was because of friends. I decided to volunteer for about, when I was taking a sabbatical, I was like, let me volunteer just so that I can understand what's going on. And a friend of mine happens to be consulting for Zambia for early child development. So I ended up there through her connection. And I stayed there for the first time I stayed there for 4 months just to learn. And so I guess the short answer in that case is it's by chance, by opportunities, and by connections. And I decided to stay longer was because I was able to connect through different connections. And that's how I ended up finding my co-founder, whom we have mutual friends with. So
happens.
That's a long answer, huh?
That was a great answer. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today and answering our questions. Everyone in the Innovate Pasadena community definitely appreciates it.
No problem. I'll just say one more. Check out this company called Zipline, guys. They're the one who is California-based, and they made the first commercialized, what do you call this? Not the helicopter, the, oh my gosh, my brain's, okay, anyway, check out Zipline because they figure out how to commercialize their transportation solutions before they ended up solving COVID problem for blood delivery in North Carolina. So something to look into too.
Great. Can you spell it or share a URL?
Oh, yeah, it's Zipline drones. I was thinking about drones. Sorry, my brain is totally fried. Yeah, check them out. It's a really another awesome story. Why you don't have to figure out your business model in your own place. You can go somewhere else to figure that out. So
awesome. Thank you so much again for joining us.
No problem.
Thanks everyone for attending, and we will post Maggie's Q&A on YouTube, so be sure to follow the Innovate Pasadena YouTube channel.